Alright, today I'm going to cover probably the most important topic in physics, how to actually succeed in physics. You know, a lot of people, they know the math, they understand the formulas, but then when they look at physics problems, they don't know what to do. They look up a solution, they follow through it, makes sense, they see a different problem, they're just as lost. It happens all the time. I've been helping people in physics for a bit over a year now. If I had a penny for every equals time I've seen it, I don't know, I would have a lot of money. But either way, so the math is not the hardest part of physics, and when you look things up, it mostly helps you with the math because you don't have to do the math for yourself. Assuming that you're good at pre-calculus and you know a little bit of calculus, the math shouldn't be your main obstacle. If the math is, you got to get better at math. I'm just sorry. It's a prerequisite in physics. It assumes that you know math. So here's what I recommend you do. So in class, make sure you get every single iClicker right. If you don't understand the iClickers, you are missing crucial components. iClickers are usually very easy numerical wise, but they test concepts and understandings. If you don't understand the concepts, ask your TA. They are absolute lifesavers. You have to know the concepts in iClickers though. If your teacher does iClickers, he did for me, Korchov. Alright. So when you approach a problem, note what you're given and what you need. So then once you take what you're given and what you need to know what you can assume. Like, oh, is time 0 or is change of distance, blah, blah, blah. You have to know what you can assume. And then you take what you have and see what equations you can use to get eventually what you need. It's kind of like solving a puzzle. There's a certain way, sometimes there's a couple ways that you can get to the right answer, but it's not always completely straightforward, and there are easier and better ways to do things. But just like puzzles, the more you solve them and the more you realize patterns, the faster and more importantly, more accurate you get at them. So eventually, if you do more enough, you can recognize certain concepts that use certain equations or certain concepts that tend to ask similar kinds of questions. Like for blocks on a ramp problems, there's always different kinds of questions they can ask, but they're all ultimately use the same thing. Like, oh, what's the speed of the thing when it rolls down this far? Or oh, what force of friction is needed to stop it from rolling? These all use the same kind of equations. That's just a general example. Generally, if you're preparing for exams, homework problems alone are not enough. Homework problems, some of them are quite tough. They're definitely hard enough, the harder problems, but there's not enough of them. So you have to do more practice. Luckily, practice is so easy to find. There are so many problems you can do if you wanted to. Understand each and every equation you use. You can remember how to derive them. You don't have to, but if you do, that's great. But that's not completely necessary, unless if you simply understand what each equation does, and how to use one, and what situations you use it. When you start tackling problems, it makes it much easier to figure out which equation to use. I already touched on this before. Know what you can and cannot assume, because assumptions make certain impossible seeming problems easy, but wrong assumptions can lead you to the wrong answer. Alright, try problems without getting any help at least once. But, so if you try to get help, it's much better if you work through it yourself so you can explain exactly where you got stuck. If you don't, and you get help, it's not really much different than just looking up the answer. Always do it yourself first. Lectures shouldn't be the first time you hear something. In my opinion, lectures in physics and most STEM classes in general move too quickly to be an introduction to what they're talking about and learn it at the same time. So instead of going to lecture, reviewing what you just heard, then going to get help and do problems, I recommend reviewing the next lecture in advance, going to lecture, ask for help, and then do the problems. It takes the same amount of total time. You're just moving the review from before to after. But I think it makes it much easier and it makes lectures much more productive. Usually professors have past recordings or the lecture slides out in advance. You don't have to watch the entire thing, but at least to understand generally what's going on in next lecture so you know what to ask. So you know, it probably happened already. It's like when professor asks for questions and everyone's quiet. Well, I seriously doubt that every single person doesn't knows everything. It's just people that do have questions don't know what to ask. It's like, how many times has that happened to you? I don't know what I don't know. Well, if you're seeing something for the second time and for the first time you figured out what you don't know, and the second time in class you can ask right then and there because the professor is the most knowledgeable person you can ask. And it would be nice if you can ask right then and there. And then, obviously, most importantly, get help. Physics is hard. Literally everyone would agree with you. I don't think anyone will say physics is easy. Your TAs and your professors are all incredible people. I loved my TA when I took the class. And if it wasn't for them, learning physics at UF wouldn't be any different than learning anywhere else. Finally, if you want to, you can always ask me for help. I'll always try my best to explain my thought process. And also, I had people like send me their work, and I just tell them where they went wrong exactly and what mistakes they made there. Some people like that, some people like my videos, but always feel free to DM me. If you live in Rawlings Hall, you can talk to me. I'm in the common room on the second floor pretty often. If you do live in Rawlings, you probably know who I am. Don't worry, I won't hurt you. And yeah, I'll always assume you're going to obey academic honesty and help you as much as I can. So yeah, don't cheat. And that's overall how I suggest you treat physics and how you can succeed in physics, because physics 1 and 2 are both very tough classes. So best of luck.